As of the 2nd of March, the oil spill actually already reached an area of 6 kilometers long and 4 kilometers wide. The oil has since reached the shores of multiple towns, and DNR has confirmed that it has affected 34 marine protected areas already. As of the 6th of March, the exact location of the vessel is still unknown. The vessel is still leaking, but authorities have not confirmed whether the leak is from the cargo. The DNR has set up Task Force Nauhan oil spill in an attempt to protect marine life, with multiple agencies and local government units working to contain the spill. So, this is further proof that the fossil fuel industry is a danger to biodiversity, human lives, and the local economy surviving off of our natural resources. Without long-term action against fossil fuel expansion, these incidents will continue to happen, not only worsening climate change through carbon emissions, but also destroying ecosystems and biodiversity that are vital to people's life, health, and livelihoods. We very well know that Philippines has its history of oil spill. And now is the right time to talk about this, to actually coordinate with the national agencies, with the various organizations, for us to talk about its impacts and what we can do in the foreseeable future for us to mitigate this. And for today, I am your moderator, Evan Marie Plapar. I am from STEP Philippines and a Greenpeace volunteer. Without further ado, we start off this public online forum with our speaker from the Provincial Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office of Oriental Mindoro, Sir Ram, since to acquaint us with how they actually implement the required actions and measures pertaining to this oil spill, specifically in aspects of disaster risk reduction and management and risk assessment and early warning. Please help us welcome the PDRRMO, Sir Ram. Joseph Temenia.
Good morning, everyone. Let me share to you po kung ano po yung situations namin dito sa Oriental Mindoro. So with regards po sa oil spill na nangyari during last February 28 po, 2023 dito sa may vicinity ng coastal water po ng Municipality of Nauhan. So sa amin pong initial report ay with the PCG ay ito po ay nag-submerge po nung February 28 and then reported ng submerged na, fully submerged last March 1. And until now, March 8 ay yung efforts po ng atin pong PCG with the help of DNR, the NAMRIA, the exact location ng pinaglubugan hindi pa
Recording in progress.
Talagang nakikita sa ngayon the exact location, but they narrow it, so may mga radius and perimeter na po silang na-present sa amin, but the actual and the exact location is not yet fully known. And i-share ko lang rin po na we have out of the Oriental Mindoro has 15 municipalities, and out of 15 municipalities, we have 9 municipalities na reportedly affected by the oil spill. And we have 65 barangays affected with oil spill. So ang pinakang grabe po dito sa amin is the municipality of Pola. The only municipality na meron po kaming sightings ng oil spill sa shoreline na. So they have 11 barangays reported na ang oil spill po ay umabot sa kanilang shoreline. And then we have 111 affected barangays with fisher folks po. Kasama po dito yung mga registered and unregistered fisher folks po natin, and fish vendors and other families na ang ang source ng income ay ang ating karagatan. As of now po, the updated list of affected families ay nasa 19,556. So that's from Nauhan, Municipality of Nauhan, down to Municipality of Bulalakaw. And then, meron po kaming 29 MPAs, and out of 29 MPAs from Nauhan to Bulalakaw is we have 13 MPAs na affected po ng oil spill. So yan po ay kulang estimated na nasa 2,743 hectares ng affected po dito sa Oriental Mindoro. Sa amin naman po sa health, we have 18 reportedly dito sa municipality ng Pola, na ito po ay mga nasa buhay na tubig, barangay buhay na tubig. Meron po ditong reported na 18 na mga kababayan namin na nagkasakit through inhalation po ng napadpad pong langis sa shoreline nila. Sa situations po namin dito, especially Pola, we have put up po yung ating incident command post dito sa bayan ng Pola para matulungan ang munisipyo na mag-manage ng aming nararanasan na disaster. Ang nagiging mahirap po sa amin ngayon at sa operations is the sea conditions, especially yung atin pong barangay affected na heavily affected, which is buhay na tubig and Bakawan. Hindi po siya mapuntahan dahil pwede siyang accessible siya sa mga bangka lang at saka sa motorcycle po. Kaya po yung mga atin pong efforts na makuha yung waste dito sa dalawang barangay ay until now po ay hindi pa rin magawa. Kahapon po nagkaroon ng tinangka po uling puntahan dahil medyo gumanda ang panahon. Tinangka po itong puntahan ng ating DNR and then the Philippine Army just to get the waste po na nakolekta ng ating mga kasamahan doon. But sad to say ay until now ay hindi po nila makuha dahil nga po sa sea condition. And then ayon sa kanila, yung situations doon ay iba po talaga yung amoy. Kahit naka-inhalator ka na ay sobrang hirap huminga at saka sobrang baho doon sa lugar na yon kung saan dapat sanang kuhanin yung mga oil spill waste po na nung nakaraan. So meron po tayong reported na 21.5 drums collected and collected po ng DENR sa tatlong barangay, from Barangay Kalima, Batuhan, and Misong. And yung heavily affected na po na buhay na tubig, which is napakaraming oil spill, ay hindi pa rin po natin nakukuha yung mga waste po doon. So yun po yung kabuuang situations dito sa amin sa Oriental Mindoro, and the government of Oriental Mindoro, the provincial government of Oriental Mindoro, are really trying na ma-contain po ito dahil since March 1 ay ang ating pong governor is hands-on po sa situation na ito and nakikipag-usap sa iba't ibang agency, especially the PCG, dahil sila po ang ating itinalagang incident commander po dito, main agency na mga siwa at ah, mga siwa po, mag-manage po ng incident po na ito sa buong lalawigan. And patuloy po ang dating ng mga tulong from iba't ibang agency, especially the DSWD and the DENR, lalo po yung mga tao nila deployed dito, natutulungan kami for the water sampling na ginagawa nila and then collection ng data itong sa mga waste po na nakukuha sa ating mga shorelines. Yun po ang konting overview ng sitwasyon po dito sa Oriental Mindoro.
Marami pong salamat, Sir Ram Joseph Temenia, for the updates. So, while we really appreciate the efforts that the Provincial Disaster Risk and Reduction Management Office is doing, we clearly and we can vividly see the impacts on health of this oil spill, and not just to the environment, but most evidently to the people and to the locals that are residing in such areas. And so while we move forward in this online forum, we welcome Commodore Fidelis Salidao to acquaint us with the PCG, or the Philippine Coast Guard, updates.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. How's my signal, ma'am? Hello?
It's okay, sir. We can hear you clearly. Okay naman po, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am, for inviting us in this forum. For the updates on the status response for the Coast Guard, we have two kinds of response. One is the offshore response. Offshore response means doon po mismo sa site na suspected na linubugan ng barko. Sa offshore response, we are employing spill boom operations and dispersant operations. On the spill boom operations, ginagamit po natin ang mga malalaking booms para ma-contain natin ang lumalabas na oil from under the water. And then pag na-collect po yan, sir, ma'am, they will use the skimmer or manual scooping para ma-contain, mailagay sa isang container, then it will be brought here at the pier in Calapan for maibigay natin sa yung treater na hire ng company. As of now, sir, for the collected oily waste mixture is 580 liters of oily water mixtures, ma'am. Bakit yun lang po ang nakolekta natin? It is because of the dispersal operations that we are conducting. We spray yung spill, yung lumalabas na oil, so that ma-dilute siya, what do you call that? It will disperse. So, yun ang kwan natin, kaya yun lang ang nakuha natin as of now na oil. While for the offshore operations, offshore cleanup, we deployed 4 teams concentrating in the barangays of Pola, which is being the hardest hit municipality in the coastal cleanup. This is also in coordination with our DENR and the LGU, which was also reported by Sir Ram a while ago. Ram kanina. Pero yun lang, hindi nakalimutan niyang isama yung Coast Guard sa pagko-collect ng waste. Kasama po kami, ma'am, sa ng Army at saka yung DENR sa pagko-collect ng Baka na-mislook lang niya po. So, as of reporting, yung kanina ko namin po ma'am is that we have collected approximately 16.63 cubic meters of debris, mga na-contaminate ma'am na kwan. Pati na rin yung mga ginamit nating absorbent booms and absorbent pads. We do conduct daily shoreline monitoring to see if there is the concentration of oil that lumalabas. So doon kami nagbe-base ang concentration na rin po ng aming operation. Tomorrow, with the guidance of our good governor, Governor Dolor, all agencies headed by the Coast Guard will be conducting a simultaneous coastal cleanup, particularly in all the barangays that are affected. Hopefully, ma'am, na with this coastal cleanup is maibsan o makakuha natin yung dulot na oil na dumaan sa ating shoreline. We also employed spill booms sa mga rivers. Dalawang river po ang ating nalagyan ng spill boom para ma-contain or ma-mitigate natin or mapigilan natin ang pagpasok ng emulsified oil sa ating mga MPAs or mga fish sanctuaries dito sa Pola, ma'am. For that, ma'am, yan lang po, ma'am, ang aming update on the response of the Coast Guard here at Oriental Mindoro, particularly Pola Municipality. Thank you, ma'am.
Maraming salamat, Commodore Fidel Salitaw, sa updates on what the Philippine Coast Guard is currently doing to mitigate this oil spill. I remember that I saw this press conference that our president had, and he also mentioned about this cash off work program, in which he encourages the local fisher folks to actually since they cannot fish, right, sir, since the oil spill has actually been affecting the livelihood of the fisher folks. So is also encouraging the fisher folks to actually be included in this coastal cleanup. Thank you so much for that, Sir Salidao. So to move
Yes,
forward, yeah, okay, yes, okay.
Ma'am, can I additionally, ma'am? Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
sir.
Regarding your statement a while ago, ma'am, our fisher folks or those who are affected are also they will join in the coastal cleanup, and the SWD will be giving some cash for work program for them.
Yes. Thank you po,
Thank you.
Sir Salidao. Okay. Sa susunod naman na part of this online public forum, we have the Center for Energy, Ecology, and Development for us to acquaint us on the number of fisher folks actually affected, the impacts on the economy, and what it actually means for the health of the people. So we have Sir Ivan Andres from CCED for this.
Good morning. The Center for Energy, Ecology, and Development would like to highlight not only the great impact to the marine ecosystem of the area, but also the major impact on the livelihoods of affected communities that have seemingly been put on hold due to this incident. Currently, there are about 18,000 fisher folk in Oriental Mindoro alone, and unfortunately, they are not able to fish or even allowed to fish. Based on the recent data provided by our colleagues here in the forum, there's even more than 18,000. But the impacts are not only felt by the fisher folk. The team deployed by CEED on the ground learned that livelihood impacts are being felt by workers and businesses alike, despite not being directly affected by the no fishing order. This is for the reason that these businesses and these resorts are being dependent on fisheries and the tourism aspect as well. So a no fishing order or prevention of tourism activities is a major hit to these businesses. In fact, the fishing industry was valued at 11.8 billion across the 5 provinces of the Verde Island Passage in 2021. So the Oriental Mindoro is a province, a part of the Verde Island Passage. And on the other hand, the revenue of the tourism sector for Oriental Mindoro was approximately 3.5 billion in 2019. So needless to say, these figures show how dependent this province is on fisheries and tourism. Apart from the impact on livelihoods, another major impact is health implications. As of March 8, 43 people living in the affected villages had already reported suffering, vomiting, headaches, and nausea since the oil reached their shores. So a further look into these incidents would reveal perhaps further findings on the health implications. In terms of the current scope of the oil spill, I would like to re-echo key findings from the scientific community. According to the Marine Science Institute, about 36,000 hectares of mangroves, coral reefs, seagrasses can be affected by the oil spill. And projections show spilled oil could further spread to other communities towards the west of Oriental Mindoro, near Calapan, and even southwards to Palawan. So this further highlights the richness of the natural resources in Oriental Mindoro, where these fisher folk, where these communities and businesses are mostly reliant on. So it's a major hit for these people. And to share further updates, both chambers of Congress have now initiated investigations on the oil spill. Senator Tolentino initiated for the Senate, while Cavite 4th District Representative Elpidio Barzaga initiated for the House. Another development is that the bill imposing as much as a 10 million peso penalty to ship owners who will be found guilty of discharge or emission of oil, sewage, garbage, and other harmful substances and pollutants into Philippine seas have been filed by Negros Occidental Representative Kiko Benitez. Voices from the affected communities have indicated that cash aid and food packs are being released. However, communities worry that their sufficiency and until when they would actually last. So as time passes, while the hold order on fisheries continue, this issue will become more and more apparent among the fisherfolk community. And we highly recommend that extensive efforts be exerted to immediately contain the oil spill. As for the impacts, these should be addressed immediately in order to address the food supply issue, livelihood, health, and economic welfare of affected communities. And we also need to ensure reparations for damages and that companies at fault for the oil spill are fully held accountable for this incident. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Sir Ivan Andres, on actually informing us of the grave effects of this oil spill that has brought upon our community and also to our marine ecology. And as a medical student, this verily disheartens me because there is a certain pathophysiology on how oil spill actually affects human health. So basically, there are physiological effects and physical effects, which Sir Ivan Andres mentioned, right? And for what is the purpose of this online forum is to not just inform us and acquaint us of the impacts, but really to compel us and make us feel the urgency that we have to do because we don't want our Filipino people to actually have these detrimental health effects. So thank you so much, Sir Ivan Andres, for informing us about that because nausea and vomiting, these are acute stresses actually, but in the long term, there can also be chronic stress that can happen. And this needs to be addressed, really. So thank you so much for that. For our next set of speakers, we welcome Oceana, and first and foremost, Attorney Liza Osorio for the Oceana Legal and Policy Director, wherein she'll discuss on the government's duties and accountability measures. Welcome, sir. Welcome, Attorney Liza Osorio.
Hi, thank you, Evan. So on behalf of Oceana, I'd like to also present our call on our government for immediate response measures to ensure compliance with national laws and regulations, including safeguards under international treaties. There are actually accountability measures in place already in our laws, such as the amended Fisheries Code, the Clean Water Act, the Oil Pollution Law, and in these laws, there is a polluter pays principle that is evident. And under the polluter pays principle, particularly RA 9483 spells out the liability for those responsible for the oil spill. For instance, cleanup operations at sea or onshore, the expenses therefore, the expenses for preventive measures and further loss or damage caused by preventive measures, consequential loss or loss of earnings suffered by owners or users of property contaminated or damaged as a direct result of the incident, pure economic loss or loss of earnings that are of persons that have been affected by the oil spill, even damage to human health or loss of life as a direct result of the incident, including their expenses for rehabilitation and recuperation. So as mentioned earlier, there have been already 18 reported individuals in Pola, Barangay Buhay na Tubig, that have been sick from the inhalation of oil fumes. And so the cost and of diagnosis as well as to determine whether there is long-term damage should also be included in the damages to human health. And then finally, environmental damages and other reasonable measures of environmental restoration. Government duties and accountabilities are also set out, especially in our international commitments, such as for oil spill response under MARPOL Annex 1, where actually this oil spill tragedy should not have happened if these preventive measures have been put in place. Like, for instance, under Annex 1, oil tankers now should be safely built and operated and are constructed to reduce the amount of oil spill. There are clear operational and construction regulations introduced by MARPOL, safety regulations such as a mandatory traffic separation and sea lanes were segregated where these oil tankers would pass through. And in 1996 even, the tankers are required to be fitted with a double hull. So this also highlights the under MARPOL, the immediate and long-term responses that are needed. For instance, the immediate assessment of the damage, of the oil spill damage, containment measures, so which is very, very essential to prevent the further spread of the oil spill, and of course, removal and then rehabilitation. So these are all in place, and I think we call on the government. I believe that the government already have the necessary tools, but what is more important is to ensure that the strict accountability mechanisms should be enforced. Thank you so much, Evan.
Thank you so much, Attorney Liza Osorio, for stressing the government's duties and accountability measures, which should have been happening right now. And safe to say that oil spillage history in the Philippines is not new to us, and thereby we really encourage the call. We emphasize in this call because we need to really address this, the band-aid solutions that we're doing right now. And just like what attorney has mentioned, the long-term impacts, there should be immediate assessment on all of these sorts, because this not just affects the environmental health, but also the human health and the overall health of our country. So thank you for that, Attorney Liza Osorio. For our next speaker from Oceana, we have Sir Jesse Florin of the Oceana he is the VIRRS database administrator, on informing us regarding the information gathering tool developed by Oceana.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can I share my screen because I'll be presenting our tool for the community to use. This is an interactive mapping tool that we use sa Karagatan Patrol po. So I'll be sharing my screen here. Okay, I hope nakikita niyo yung screen ko. So, if you want to go along with me, mayroong itong QR code. You can just scan this to go along with me. This is our platform. This is an interactive mapping platform. So, it's karagatanpatrol.org. So, pag nandoon kayo, you can use this. Ito'y in-establish natin o create natin basically to monitor illegal fishing activities, because you notice dito sa mapping layers niya mayroong various boat detection, but because of this situation we are focusing our efforts now to monitor yung extent ng oil spill, so ito yung default na ngayon sa ating platform, yung Karagatan Patrol. So you will notice yung several layers, particularly ito yung location ng based from Nambria's bulletin, nandito daw po yung yung location sa vicinity na to dito. Okay? And then we also map out the extent of the affected communities like the barangays. Ito yung nandoon na talaga sa shoreline, mayroon ng actual documentation na dumating na sa shoreline yung oil slick, And then, of course, itong municipal waters naman, ito yung mga municipal waters affected. So far, nandito yung concentration sa Oriental Mindoro, pero umabot na po dito sa Badang Agutaya, Colyon area, And then, you can also, the community can also, like yung mga responders, they can use this platform to assess kung mayroon bang mga critical ecosystem in that area, Because in our platform, we also have coastal habitats here, mangrove, seagrass, and coral reefs. Now, for example, in this area, in Bulalakaw, pwede niyong tingnan yung mga affected coastal habitats. Like dito sa area, kasi ito na yung mga shoreline na nandoon na talaga yung oil, di ba? So most likely itong mga coastal habitats na to, pag i-off ko lang yung red polygon. So yan, may mga affected coral reefs na siya dito. Yan, may mga seagrass, may mga mangroves na po. Ito yung mga extent of ecosystems that can be affected or that are affected already sa oil spill na to. So ito lang pong i-share namin that the community can use this to respond to whatever needed intervention. Okay, so ang data natin dito is galing sa NDRMC kasi meron silang daily updates on the extent of the damage, as well as we complemented that one with crowdsourced data using Facebook and other social media platform. I think that's all that I can share. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sir Jesse Florin, for sharing this valuable, very valuable tool for us, the Visible Infrared Imaging Radiometer Suite of Oceana, which actually, for me and in my own perspective, it actually incorporates the national government agencies' efforts, such as the NDRMC, and this also actually encourages the Filipino people to be involved in issues such as this. So thank you so much for that, for sharing that to us and to our viewers and to those who are joining us in this public online forum. So you can actually access, I'm also part of the Karagatan Patrol, and there's a Facebook group for that. So if you want to be more informed and to be daily updated about things as such with our ocean here in the Philippines, so you can follow and be part of that Facebook group. moving forward, we have mentioned and we have talked about the government's duties and accountability measures and the tools and certain measures that have actually been mentioned. And so, such as what I stated, the oil spill in the Philippines is not new to us. And we actually want to learn and talk about, again, the lessons that we have learned from the Guimaras oil spill, and perhaps we could actually utilize that as well in the recent oil spill that is happening right now. So we have our next speaker from Oceana, Sir Danny Ocampo, the Oceana Senior Campaign Manager. Welcome, Sir Danny.
Yeah, thank you, Evan. But before I speak on the lessons that we should have learned from the Guimaras oil spill, we want to show a couple of videos taken from fisher folk and Bantay Dagat in Pola, Mindoro. One of our local partners, Arvel Malubag, who used to work with another NGO, went to Pola this past few days and tried to gather information and statements from the locals and LGUs there. So we will be showing a video from a fisher folk who's actually being affected by the loss of the opportunity to earn something from fishing, and also a volunteer Patay Dagat. And my colleague Joyce will show the video.
7 years old po, mga isda ng Barangay Sitio Aguada, Barangay Bayanan, Pula, Oriental Mindoro. Ako po ay nagsimula ng mga isda ay 1980, ito pa po.
Ano po ang naging epekto sa inyo yung pangyayari ng oil spill na ito? Nakapekto po ba sa inyong hanap buhay?
Ngayon po ay malaki pong apekto sa aming paghanap buhay sa dagat dahil po dito sa ating mga langis na nalubog. Kaya malaki po ang nawala sa aming mga isda na panghanap buhay sa araw-araw.
Sa tingin niyo po, magkano po ang inyong kinikita sa pangingisda ilang araw para ibuhay sa inyong pamilya?
Sa aming pangingisda, sa aming napagbasihan po, ay hindi puro perme ang aming kita. Kuminsan po, na sa ngayon ng presyo ay nakakahuli kami na nakakuha kami na.
Sorry.
500. Halos konsumo lang po ang inaabot. Nandiyan lang po sa mga ng 500. Halos konsumo lang po ang inaabot.
Ano pong panawagan niyo sa ating gobyerno? Masolusyonan niyo po nangyayaring spill.
Sana po sa panahon ito ng pagkalubog ng barko, yung mga isda namin na katulad namin mga isda na dyan namin umaasa sa dagat, sana po kami mabigyan po ng financial na para kami po ay makaraos ng aming, para makabalik pagkatapos ng krisis na ito, makabalik ulit kami sa pangisda sa aming hanap buhay.
Sa lukuyan po, ano pong ginagawang paraan ng Bantay Dagat para makatulong sa pagkatanggal ng langis?
Sila po ay kumakalap ng kanilang mga tauhan, mga Bantay Dagat, mga kaswal na mga Bantay Dagat at volunteer, ay sila po ay may tulong-tulong po sila na maglinis ng baybayin.
Maraming salamat po, sir. Thank you po.
Ako po si Larry Atienza, 53 taong gulang, na nakatira dito sa sitio Kabilay Bayo.
Ano po ang epekto sa inyo ng oil spill?
Napakalaking epekto po para sa amin ng oil spill na yan. Dahil sa dagat lang ho kami kumukuha ng aming ikinabubuhay. Ako po si Larry Atienza,
53 taong gulang na nakatira dito sa sitio Kabilay Bayo.
Ano po ang epekto sa inyo ng oil spill?
Napakalaking epekto para sa amin ng oil spill na yan. Dahil sa dagat lang ho kami kumukuha ng aming ikinabubuhay.
That's it then. Madam.
Yeah, okay. So thank you very much for those videos, Joyce. So as you can see, yung fisher folk dun sa Paula are affected now by the no fishing order that was sent around. And every day they get from the sea what they need to actually sustain their family's needs. So malino yung panawagan nila po na sana matugunan yung pangangailangan nila ng suporta mula sa gobyerno. I know our government is doing their best to get some people involved in the cleaning para sa meron silang kaunting income from the cleaning. Pero sana po, even though we are providing them an alternative income source from the cleaning, sana isaalang-alang din yung health nila and to follow safety protocols. Kasi nagugulat ako ng isang araw na nakita akong may mga taong nagtatabo-tabo and then you hear people are getting sick from inhaling the fumes. And if I were to go back dun sa experience sa Guimaras, which is the focus of what I want to say this morning, I was with the Greenpeace team when I used to work with Greenpeace before moving to Oceana in 2006. We went to Guimaras to actually bear witness on the oil spill in that area, and from then I think we have had around 5 more major oil spills. And looking back to what we saw in Guimaras, parang parang deja vu yung nangyayari ngayon for me, from somebody who bared witness or bore witness dun sa nangyari na I saw people before sa Guimaras na tinatabo-tabo yung oil with no personal protection equipment, and I saw that again in Pola. And here we are 10 days into the oil spill in Mindoro, and the same thing sa Guimaras na parang a few days after, there's still no clear ways to actually contain the spill. So I think what we have to learn from Guimaras is that, as Evan said earlier, parang we know that there's still dependency of the Philippines on oil. So sana dapat lahat ng mitigation measures, lahat ng batas na kailangan ipatupad in terms of safety, like Attorney Liza mentioned. Matagal na yung law na dapat yung mga vessels transporting oil should have all the equipment available just in case mishaps happen. Double hull dapat yung nagta-transport na tankers. And we invited Mayor Mary Jinte. I think she'll be joining in a bit. Pero for LGUs then yung preparedness and also information sharing. And fisher folk are important members of our society, and they should actually be involved and aware of what's going on. We salute government agencies for doing their part, pero we think there's not enough information that's available para there's preparedness. People in Antique are reaching out to Oceana and maybe the other NGOs para tanungin kami, what should we do just in case yung oil will reach our shores? And that's the same questions that happened like in the Guimaras oil spill, yung trajectory ng spill, where it's going. People didn't know how to prepare. What's the proper protocol to really contain the spill and prevent it from reaching the shores, where it can damage important habitats like seagrasses and mangroves. And in 2006, I dove with another photographer under the oil slick in Guimaras, and yung MPAs na na-mention kanina ni Sir from Mindoro, no, na naapektuhan na ng oil spill. And these are things that we should have been prepared for. So sana, for me, what we should have learned from Guimaras would really be having the laws implemented na ang tagal-tagal na. That's 2006. We are now 2023 na. No? That's a lot of years na sana naging prepared na tayo and have the proper mitigation measures, equipment, and also yung looking forward is really paano mo really tutulungan yung mga communities that have been displaced now from the no fishing I don't think everyone that's affected will be involved in the cleanup kasi yun nga, parang the opportunity is only for a limited time. But the fishing, which has been stopped and will be stopped in the next few maybe days, weeks, months, we don't know, depending on the water quality. Sana yun yung unang tingnan kasi fisher folks are still among the poorest of the poor in our society, and we should actually look out for their welfare. So yun lang po, maraming salamat.
Thank you so much for that, Sir Danny Ocampo, for actually first and foremost, no, showing us first on how the sentiments of the local fisher folks and how they're very affected with this oil spill, and how they're hoping for them to be actually facilitated in times of this disaster. But actually, Sir Danny, my curiosity is that with the lessons learned from the Guimaras oil spill, I'd also like to ask, and for our viewers, um, yeah, for our viewers as well, that during the Guimaras oil spill, was there any medical health intervention for the people? Because just like what Sir Ram mentioned, there even if you wear an inhalator, the stench is actually too strong. So you can actually be still affected, greatly affected. So how much more with those the local residents that they're actually present in the area? Was there actually a health intervention that have been done before we move forward to our next speaker?
Yeah, I cannot recall any intervention, but I know that some communities had to relocate for a few weeks or days para lang hindi nila ma-inhale because the mangroves were the oil spill actually ended up are actually near residential areas. So what's really sad is really knowing and hearing from the locals that the mangroves and some habitats really died out. And it takes years, decades for these mangroves to recover and even the seagrass beds.
Okay. Thank you, po, Sir Danny, for that. So I really hope with that information provided, I hope the national government can take a look. Also, perhaps, in my opinion, and just in my opinion, the DOH can actually intervene with regards to this, can actually cooperate with regards to this, because it's not just the environmental health that's very affected, but also the human health as well. So moving forward, we welcome the Libertad Antique Mayor Jean Te, for the updates from Antique.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Mayor Mary Jean Te of Libertad. Thank you very much for acknowledging. Actually, as of this day, nagbabantay pa rin kami nung maaring pagpasok ng oil spill sa aming bayan, because Libertad has been very vigilant with our coastal areas. Naging winner kami sa Para Elmar, at ngayong panahon na to, ito yung tuna season dito sa area namin. So tons of tunas are being caught through sustainable fishing, at hindi namin pinapapasok yung mga commercial fishers dito. But I'm just so worried na baka lang mag-shift ang hangin at pupunta dito sa Northern Antique. We have the biggest number of mangroves, and we have a very well-managed coastal resources so far sa Northern Antique. Kaya yun ang kinakatakutan namin, na baka mapunta dito sa amin ang oil spill. Yes po.
Thank you so much for that, Mayor Jinte. So thank you for updating us on how Antique is managing this oil spill, and your concerns regarding if ever it actually reaches the northern part of Antique. So thank you for informing us regarding that, and for actually being part of this forum, and if you actually if you may, you can actually stay longer for the open forum in the later part of this program. Okay.
Yes, pa. Yeah, I will. I'll stay here all of yasa namin, but that's okay. I can stay and then wait until because I'm scared. Malagay din kami sa alanganin in case dumating yung punto na mahirapan na kaming mag-address ng problema pag andito na. It has to be more of a preventive muna talagang bago dumating yon, right? Thank you very much.
Yes po. And happy fiesta as well, Mayor.
Thank you very
So
much.
yeah. Okay po. So moving forward, we have Sir Jefferson Chua, the Greenpeace campaigner, to actually inform us on the data presentation on regarding this with a pre-recorded message from Paul Horstman, the Greenpeace strategic advisor.
Great, thank you, Evan. So I want to summarize where we are now so far. So we have seen that we have had a significant impact, right? In terms of community and biodiversity. The biodiversity impacts we have clearly seen in the reports of the number of MPAs that have been affected. And in terms of community impacts, we have seen in terms of livelihood, in terms of access to ecosystem services, no? And of course, the health impacts, which was extensively spoken about just a while ago. And we have also seen that there are efforts being done in terms of spill booms being deployed and dispersants being used. And of course, the continuous monitoring is also happening as we speak. And we have also seen that there is going to be a simultaneous coastal cleanup. But of course, the utmost need to protect responders, right, from the toxic effects of this oil is paramount in that effort. And lastly, we have seen that there can be liabilities to the companies involved in this spill because of course, our national laws, which use the polluters pay principle, and of course, our international commitments in MARPOL. But we want to zoom out as well with the impacts of this oil spill and really see how these oil spills are an example of how the fossil fuel industry inflicts permanent damage to communities and biodiversity. And we have also seen in the presentation of Sir Danny a while ago that the effects of the oil spill right now seems like a deja vu of the worst oil spill that we had back in Guimaras. So we want to zoom out, right? And we want to talk about how this oil spill can be adverse to all of these communities and all of these marine protected areas in the long term. So if you allow me, I will pass it to the video, the pre-recorded message that our expert has recorded.
Was a trained marine biologist, and I did some work on the impacts of oil spills on the marine environment. Consequently, when working for Greenpeace, I've actually acted as a responder to different oil spills around the world. I was in the Gulf in 1991 when the major oil spill at the end of the Gulf War, and recently various different oil spills. Looking at the impacts, the longer term impacts of spills, and working with our different officers around the world. And ultimately, of course, trying to campaign for a phase out of oil, gas and coal, a phase out of fossil fuels, which is what we all need in order to protect the environment as a whole. Oil spills are dangerous to marine life, to humans, to the environment, because essentially, you're dealing with a highly toxic material, a material that is poisonous, that normally is hidden, buried underground, but we've extracted it and we refined it and we send it all over the world, and sometimes it ends up being spilled into the marine environment. And the chemicals that make up oil, many of them are carcinogenic. They cause cancers. They can cause direct poisoning. Their physical effects on animals, they reduce the insulation effect of bird feathers, and so birds drown. You get thousands and thousands of birds die every year from the impacts of oil. And the other issue that history tells us is that, over the decades, 1967 was the first major tanker spill. And over the sort of 50 or 60 years of tanker spills and oil spills, we've learned that the damage is long lasting. It's difficult to deal with. And there's a whole science being generated around, what do you do after an oil spill over in those years. So the fact is, if you look, the famous oil spill like the Exxon Valdez, which happened in March 1989, 30 years after that spill, you can still find Exxon Valdez oil in the sediment around the area. So, every oil spill, despite what governments and authorities might say, has a permanent, lasting effect on the environment. And it's not just that there is obvious. It's not that there is obvious black tides coming in when you get in the sort of first stage of an oil spill. It's more what you don't see, and when all the cameras have gone and the environment is trying to recover. That's when the more longer term effects begin to be felt by the environment and indeed by human communities who have to live with it in the longer term. The biggest mistake by governments, by the authorities, and by corporations in responding to an oil spill is that, the biggest mistake, generally speaking, is that they totally undermine or understate the potential impacts that a spill can have. And while, if you measure this particular spill, the Princess Empress spill, with other spills, it's a relatively small amount when compared with Exxon Valdez or others, for example. The fact is, it is in a very fragile part of the environment. The places that will be impacted will have long-term impacts. But what governments and the corporations tend to do is try to undermine that, because they're trying to sort of take control of the situation. They're concerned that people are asking them questions, and they really don't want to actually many times answer the sort of concerns of the public. So the effort of governments and corporations is to get through the problem. They know there's a problem. They want to deal with it. That there are people who are responsible. There are people who need to take, who must be blamed for these kinds of accidents. And of course, the corporations and governments want to get through that process and away from the cameras and away from the public as quick as possible. So they tend to undermine the impacts that might happen, and they tend to overestimate the efforts that they can put in to try to remove the oil. Because they all talk about cleanup. You can't clean up after an oil spill. The oil is in the environment. The only things you can do is try to protect areas that have not been impacted so far. You need to try to remove oil safely from the environment, but you can't clean it up. And then you've got a whole part, once you've recovered some of the oil from the environment, you've got a whole amount of oily waste that has to be dealt with. So I think it's important that the reality has to strike. And the other problem that governments and corporations have is when they're trying to get through this quickly, their efforts at providing information is usually very poor. And so civil society and the communities are trying to get information from governments, and there is a real need for the corporations, for those in authority, to be much more open and transparent about the spill, how much was spilt and what impacts it's having, transparent about exactly what they're doing to help the environment recover, and transparent about what kinds of longer term impacts and potential compensation and reparation that might be needed for communities. So the two biggest mistakes they make is underestimating the impacts and overestimating their efforts to make the environment recover. Over the decades where there have been oil spills, there's a whole raft of science that has evolved and technology that has taught better how to deal with oil spills. And so today we're much better at it than we were, several decades ago. But the reality of it is that we are still, despite all the investigation and research, despite all of that, we're still left with the fact that we have to remove the oil physically from the environment. We have to protect areas using booms and stop more oil getting into the environment. And we have to deal with a lot of oily waste. But the real benefit, the real outcomes of many of these spills is that communities come together to try to protect their environment. And that's where you actually see some of the strongest measures after a spill is when communities come together to protect their environment and to protect their livelihoods. But it must be remembered, of course, that they're dealing with a toxic material. This material causes cancer. It has chemicals that can contaminate the skin and cause rashes and so on. So the communities do need to be warned about the health effects of dealing with it. But in a positive way, this actually raises the profile of the environment. And coming, around the time when there's been an ocean treaty declared by the UN to protect the oceans, a spill like this demonstrates just how important it is to protect the environment and how vital the role of communities are who live by the environment, by the marine environment, that with them working together in order to help the environment recover and progress.
Okay, so as we can see, these effects are really long-term and not also because the kinds of response that we usually think about doesn't address the really long-term effects of oil spill. So we also want to show this image that we have gotten from our global mapping team, showing the current oil spill and how it seems to be growing based on satellite imagery from the past few days. Next slide. There's another slide prior to that. There you go. So as we can see, these images were taken from Sentinel and Globe with our global mapping team. As you can see, in 6th and 7th of March, the oil spill is clearly there, right? But seemingly not being too visible. But you can see that the effects of the oil spill are really leaching into Paula Bay, which is bearing the brunt of the impacts right now. But if we look at the images taken yesterday, next slide, we actually see a growth in the perceived oils in the oil spill, and we see that it seems to be continually leaking. Okay, so the estimates of this spill is around 6.2 square kilometers for both of the spills, for the spills on the vessel and the spill cluster near Paula Bay. It's around 6.2 square kilometers for both of these areas, which is equivalent to around 1,000 football fields. So we can imagine how big this spill is. And while looking alarming, there is really no way to confirm through satellite imagery alone if the spill has actually worsened, because atmospheric conditions can affect the image quality. And really the only way to know and ascertain the size of this oil spill is through survey, through sampling and accurate and timely reporting by government authorities. And of course, vigilance from communities in monitoring and reporting oil spill impacts on the shore. And we think that this image underscores what all of the groups here in this forum have been saying about the lack or even conflicting information on this bill, as well as the need for picking up the pace to protect biosensitive areas from the impacts of this bill. So we need utmost transparency from the government on the real extent of spill, and its impacts. We also need transparency in terms of efforts being made to make these companies involved, to provide immediate redress to communities. And lastly, we also need transparency in terms of plans for rehabilitating communities and these biosensitive areas. Apart from the need for transparency, we also need accountability from these companies involved, of course, in line with our laws. Until now, we have seen that there's actually no information on who is the owner of the oil being transported. If we recall, Petron was immediately identified during the 2006 Guimaras oil spill. So it's very telling that there is still no information on this in public. And we also want these companies to cover the costs not only of spill control and mitigating the spread, but more importantly, as we saw the need for long-term rehabilitation efforts, that they also cover rehabilitation costs of communities and marine protected areas. As Paul has mentioned, the worst impacts were often unseen, and that companies involved should be cognizant of this and must be held accountable. We also note that the oily waste, right, that is being gathered usually produces 10 times more waste than the actual spill, as these objects that become infected with the oil must be disposed of properly in accordance with also our laws on toxic waste. So we see that the recovery is very long, and the communities bear the brunt of this effect. And this is also one of the reasons why the mayor is very right in being worried about the impacts of this oil spill reaching their shores. And lastly, we also see how the fossil fuel industry in all stages of its life cycle really poses serious and permanent threats to communities and biodiversity. And concrete steps must be made immediately to transition away from fossil fuels and facilitate a just transition towards renewable energy. So to summarize, the groups here basically have three calls. First is we demand transparency from the government and for immediate action to protect not only marine life and all of the marine protected areas around the area, but also the lives of thousands of Filipinos cut off from the source of their livelihood and whose health is now at risk. We also want to make fossil fuel polluters pay reparations to the communities that they have harmed, not only for immediate impacts, but more on long-term rehabilitation efforts. And lastly, of course, we must end the dependence of the Philippines to the fossil fuel industry, as we have seen that in all stages of the life cycle of the fossil fuel industry, impacts will be severe to communities and biodiversity. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sir Jefferson Chua, for wholesomely implicated everything about providing us information about everything on what oil spills can actually cause on the communities and on the biodiversity. So we really thank the expert opinion from Paul Forsman of Greenpeace International as well for really evaluating the historical oil spills and how it has been done and how we can actually manage this recent oil spill that's going on right now. And so to move forward for the next segment of this forum, we have this open forum, and we have actually collected questions. We have live questions in from both Zoom and Facebook. So we'll be selecting in one of these questions, and perhaps one of our speakers can answer one of those. Yeah. So we have a question from from Facebook, from Kristan Epil. So question for Attorney Osorio and others who are willing to answer. So the question goes, is there a law that provides security both in their health and financial for the people in disasters such as this? My hearts to the official folk affected in Oriental Mindoro.
Oh, of course, we have the Constitution actually that protects the right to health and the right to a healthy environment for all Filipinos. And so that would be the basis for any action that you would file. Of course, that's a constitutional right, that is a protected right and enforceable right. And so that from the Constitution, you have our environmental laws, specific environmental laws that also states the protection of those rights of people to health and to the environment. I would also just like to answer the question raised earlier here, if you want me, so that I could answer the legal questions already. Evan, if you'd allow me.
Yes, Attorney.
So
Sure.
there's a question here about the possible legal action, which is a class suit against the owner of MP Princess Empress. Of course, yes, there is a possibility of the filing of this case, because under our laws, a class suit would only require two requirements. One, that the subject matter of the controversy is of common and general interest to many persons, and that the second one is that the parties are so numerous that it is impracticable to bring them all before the courts. So one may sue on behalf of or defend for the benefit of all persons. But any person, once a class suit is filed, if the person is of interest or is an interested party to the case, can also file an intervention to protect his rights. So even if he's not part of the initial class suit, he can intervene later. The objective here of the class suit would be, of course, to obtain relief, which is to obtain civil damages against the owner of MP Princess Empress, which is enforceable under the laws that I mentioned earlier, RA 9483. But there are also other possible liabilities, especially criminal liabilities for the ship owner and the charter, perhaps, because the liability for these damages can be considered as criminal penalties under our environmental laws, because all our environmental laws are considered as special penal laws that it comes with if you violate, for instance, by causing aquatic pollution, which is a very broad definition, and this oil spill really falls under. They can file a criminal case, and there will be criminal penalties when these are violated. And so this will result to fines and penalties as well. So there are many possibilities. There are many legal reliefs that are available for those if, they would file a class suit. And so I just also would like to emphasize what is raised by Dr. Horstman earlier about the oily waste, the disposal of the oily waste or the waste that they've gathered, which was reported earlier by PCG, is also has to be disposed safely. And so under our present laws, we have Republic Act 6969 on toxic waste. These are actually stock toxic chemicals, and so they could not be considered as solid waste under RA 9003. So the disposal measures should be done using special mechanisms, not through the ordinary, just putting it, and disposing it into their dump sites. So that's really something that must be emphasized. So there should also be a proper monitoring of that and accountability of course, fortunately, the local government units as well as the national government agencies responsible for the disposal of this. So at all stages of the cleanup, the recovery and relief operations, I think there are proper, basis for accountability of those responsible. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that comprehensive answer to both of the questions raised, Attorney Liza Osorio. So we actually now know that possible class suit can actually happen, and hopefully the people of interest can actually have this addressed. And if you want to be involved, then there is really a possibility that this class suit can happen. So we have another question here in Zoom, actually. So from an anonymous person. So compared, and I guess this question can be answered by Sir Danny Ocampo. So compared to the Guimaras oil spill in 2006, what is the assessment and government efforts containing the spill and assisting affected communities? What are the lessons from the Guimaras oil spill that should be replicated, if any? And what efforts back then were ineffective and should have a different approach in the current problem in Oriental Mindoro? Hello, Sir Danny.
Hi, Evan. Sorry, I forgot to turn on my
Yes,
mic.
okay.
Yeah. For me, that's a difficult question to answer because, as I said, in terms of how government response was done on the Guimaras oil spill, I think I mentioned earlier, it's like deja vu, no? Parang it's the same thing. The response was slow. People started collecting oil from the shore without wearing the hazmat suit. So maybe that's the first learning that can be incorporated in how we will address the current oil space, to really provide safety equipment to people who are collecting the oil on the shore. That's one. Two is really to really be transparent this time and really let people know and be involved, like what Oceana did. Our transparency platform, which is the Karagatan Patrol, is really an opportunity for not only for people but also for our government agencies to actively share information para naman yung katulad nila Mayor Te, for example, they are not left in the dark, so to speak, na at least alam nila if the oil is really threatening to enter the waters of Libertad, and also to involve our fisher folk, because we understand the government does not have maybe enough resources to patrol our oceans the same it's trying to address at the same way na kulang yung patrol boats natin for addressing illegal fishing, which is my campaign, no? Pero that's why we have to be transparent. The government has to be open and allow people to also be involved in reporting, and also and also to disclose information then from our government agencies para alam ng mga tao na to how to react, how to prepare. And I think Mayor Te can say more on this, because we have been talking, Mayor, no, since the past few days na people there are really on their toes. What if pumasok sa waters namin, it's tuna season? So the learnings are that's really a clear learning from before na dapat talaga people are involved, people know, and our government should actually provide the mechanisms to mitigate, to contain, and also to provide safety sa mga tao.
Thank you so much, Sir Danny, for answering that question on regarding the what lessons we can actually replicate and what we could actually do in this recent problem that we have right now. So yeah, since you actually mentioned Mayor Te as well, so we actually have a question in Zoom which comes from Shodine Talavera to
Evan,
Mayor.
sorry.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Etef would also like to answer the question.
Oh sure. Oh sure. Okay, for sure. Sir Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. Probably a personal anecdote. I'm from Iloilo, and we bore the brunt of the effects of the oil spill. Our school was actually along the strait of Guimaras when the spill happened, and I remember concretely when when I was young that we felt left behind in terms of information, and there wasn't any clear path uh, to recovery, right? So we were just told to, mask up and probably contribute in some hair drives for spill booms that are makeshift. So there was a lot of uncertainty, and I guess I also commiserate and share that feeling of uncertainty with the honorable mayor, because that is exactly what we felt during that time. We could smell the oil in our classrooms. It was that bad. I think that kind of trauma is what a lot of our communities are facing, and a lot of other communities that have not yet been hit by this oil spill, which, by the way, is very unpredictable because of changing ocean currents, because of different weather patterns, right? and it's terrifying experience for the people on the ground. So yeah, so I think that really underscores our call for more urgency with the government and more clarity, especially for communities in trying to deal with this disaster.
Thank you so much, Sir Jeff, for sharing your valuable insight and for somehow giving us insight on the trauma that has actually induced, and not just you, but to those who have actually experienced the grave effects of the Guimaras oil spill before. So, and with that in mind, I hope that the national government and the national agencies that are listening right now, and to those who can actually help, we can all together manage and manage these impacts, both the short-term impacts and the long-term impacts. So for our next question, moving forward, we have a question from Zoom, from Shodine Talavera. So this question is addressed to Mayor Jean Te. Did any of the government agencies already approach your office, Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, Mayor. So the question is that she's asking if any of the government agencies have actually already approached your office regarding this matter.
So far, it's only Oceana who have communicated with me, but I think the SWD as well for the transfer of the relief goods to Kaluya, and the office of Congressman A.A. Ligarda. I think that's the only agency right now that had been connecting with me on the possible oil spill.
All right. Thank you for that information, Mayor Jean Te. So, and hopefully, any of the government agencies that are present right now can actually also approach your office, since there is this impending threat that's actually going on right now, and especially in your province of Antique. So, actually going back, and yeah, following up for Sir Jefferson, as someone from Iloilo, has the community been able to recover from the incident in 2006, Sir Jeff?
Yeah, based on reports, it took the affected area around 7 years to actually recover from the oil spill, which is also why it is considered the worst oil spill that has happened in the Philippines. And as what Paul Horseman said a while ago, after all the cameras have left, the impacts are still there. As we all know, there are a lot of also biosensitive
Hindi ko
areas.
kayo magamit ang cellphone ko, nag-ano.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a lot of biosensitive areas along the strait, and it is also an important fishing ground for us actually, because we rely a lot in that strait for fisheries, right? So we have had a lot of health advisories, if I remember correctly, in consuming fish, and that went on for months, and that of course that affected a lot of our fisher, right? But in terms of also the ecosystems, it took really 7 years to at least see progress in terms of recovery. Now we have seen that because of that incident in Guimaras, it actually spurred the local government there to really try to think of ways to transition away, right, from fossil fuels. And as we know, there is a wind farm right now there in Guimaras, which also really demonstrates, right, the possibilities in terms of weaning ourselves away, right, from the fossil fuel industry. So the recovery was slow, and we could expect some sort of long-term rehabilitation for this particular oil spill as well, especially since, again, we don't have enough information on the actual size of the oil spill, and we really call on the national government to really get these facts straight. for us to also know how long our communities will be bearing the brunt of these impacts.
Very much well indeed, no, Sir Jeff. So thank you so much for that. Answering the question regarding on how, especially your community as well, and how you guys coped up and how you're able to rise up in spite of the traumatic and very unhealthy toxic incident. So yeah, moving forward, we have a question from Zoom from Gaya Kabiko. Slick from the oil spill has reached the mangroves in Pola. Is this slick or sick? So sick from the oil spill has reached, slick from the oil spill has reached the mangroves in Pola. What will happen to mangroves when oil enters mangrove environments? So who can provide an answer for this? You're very much welcome to one of our speakers.
I can provide a short answer to that.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah. As you know, the mangroves have been affected, and there are a lot of striking pictures in media right now with these impacts. So for mangrove areas, we will expect a defoliation, right, or death of these shoreline mangroves. It's also important to note that these mangrove areas are key areas for mitigating a lot of the effects of climate change, actually, right? So seeing these areas being defoliated and damaged really sets us back, right, to in terms of our mitigation systems and nature-based solutions. So we also can expect the stressing and the dying off of all of these vegetation in this area, because the oil literally traps and chokes these mangroves. And as we heard from Paul, these are toxic, and residues of this oil will be left on the ground, right? Thus, basically infecting the area with the toxins from these oils, which will eventually lead to further stunting of growth in the area in terms of mangroves.
I could also add, Evan, that
Yeah, sure,
because of the
Attorney.
die off for mangroves, we will lose the ecosystem services that we enjoy from having mangroves. And one of this is really the fisheries production. So because these are nursery areas for fish, and so we will lose that, and many coastal communities, especially municipal fisherfolk, would suffer because they would be lesser production of fisheries, aside from what was emphasized by Jeff earlier about the other services, such as the mitigating effects, the effects of climate change, and coastal defenses and protection measures that it provides for us. Thank you.
Thank you for that additional, Attorney Lisa. So if Bifar can actually also add regarding this question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Well, just what has been stated, no? Because of the dying of these mangroves, there will be a lot of parang yung mga effects to our fisher folks, especially on the livelihood, because of the ecosystems services brought about by mangroves. So that's all.
Okay, thank you for that, sir. So in addition to that question, I'm just curious as to how BFAR or any other government agency can actually, since there is apparent destruction on mangrove environment, so what can BFAR actually do to or intervene regarding this matter?
Yes, ma'am. Well, actually, as of now, with coordination with the provincial Oriental Mindoro Provincial Agriculture Office and other national agencies, we are currently conducting resource assessment, not only of the mangroves, but to include the coral reefs, seagrass beds, no, and all other ecosystems. And hopefully we will be able to get the results very soon. And so we will know what our interventions we'll be making. But for now, the BFAR as an agency already have ongoing livelihood assistance in close coordination with the Provincial Agriculture Office.
All right. Thank you so much, sir, from BFAR. So we have a statement coming from Oriental Mindoro Provincial, from the PDRMO of Oriental Mindoro. So it states here that the provincial government now is facilitating the craft oil spill recovery program for food and nutrition security. How can we access assistance, technical and financial? Yeah. All right. So moving forward, we have another question from Zoom as well, from Mr. Rami Pangilinan. Is there a possibility that the oil spill can also affect our province of Marinduque, which is the adjacent province of Oriental Mindoro after the northeast monsoon? So from BFAR, might as well, sir, if you could answer this question.
Yes. Can you repeat the first question, please?
Sure po. Is there a possibility daw po that the oil spill can actually also affect the province of Marinduque, since it's the adjacent province?
The other one, the first question. Before that.
Oh, the Oriental Mindoro the statement from the PDRMO on how they can. Okay, all right. So the provincial government now is facilitating the craft oil spill recovery program for food and nutrition security. How can we access assistance, technical and financially? I think what you meant is that how can they access this assistance technically and financially?
Okay. Yes, thank you so much for that question. Now, the provincial government through the honorable governor has a pronouncement that all donations or all possible interventions, financial and in kind, should be coursed through the provincial government for the systematic and organized distribution of relief assistance. And so I think what all those affected fisher folks or anybody should closely coordinate with the municipal agriculture office or their municipal social welfare development or municipal disaster, so that they will be able to be included in the list of those who will be receiving the assistance. And I believe even all, not only for BIPAR but for all other agencies, that's the order, to centralize all the distribution to the provincial government. And for the second question, I think for now, we are so fortunate that the ongoing weather condition is still favoring the Marinduque province, and we're hoping na sana hindi na nga makarating sa Marinduque yung oil spill.
All right, thank you for that, sir. So we have to clarify that the question was actually from Agricultural Office. All right. And also we have here from PDRMO, if we can also hear from other agency aside from BFAR, they are closely working with BFAR regarding the question on the first question rather, on how we can access assistance technically and financially, like those who can actually add inputs regarding this aside from BFAR. All right, so I think PDRMO, there are no further answers to the question raised. So moving on forward to another question from Zoom. Are there any immediate actions such as local ordinances to ban single hull ships? This question might be favorable to Attorney Lisa, or yeah.
Thank you so much, Evan, for that. Um, I don't know of any local ordinances that has been passed by any LGU to ban single hull ships, or yeah. So that could be a policy reform that will be done. Another thing that I'd like to also raise is that I think it was last year during the last Congress, there were discussions in Congress to actually adopt MARPOL as a national law. Like, so certain provisions of the MARPOL should be adopted as a domestic law. But I think we had discussions up to the committee level. Then the last Congress ended without it being passed. So I think this calls for an opportunity, because what we have now is actually, although we are signatory and we are bound by MARPOL, it would do also good so that all those discussions we had in Congress to be not put to waste, to also have the adoption of MARPOL so that we can have regulations like banning of single hull ships in our laws, and of course, reform our existing laws, because some of our laws are actually very old laws, like the oil pollution control law. So these are things that we should also, as we call on our legislators to also look into, because as we're speaking, we have all these incidents already happening without us having any tighter local and national measures in place for single hull ships. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that information, Attorney Lisa. So since we are actually, yes.
If I may add something.
All right, sure, po.
Yeah. If you're aware that in the national news this morning, there was a move from Oriental Mindoro, 2nd District Congressman Alfonso Umali he's calling for a review of the maritime laws of the Philippines. If this is still applicable, no? as of the moment, no? And so I think it is a very good move by the congressman, so that we really can review, no? If that maritime law, I don't know what year it has been promulgated, and so that we can probably make some amendments, no? That would answer the problem of, for example, this oil spill. Yun lang po, no? Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that, sir. So we also have another question from Facebook by Florjan Hernandez. So question for the Coast Guard, Commodore Fidelis. It was mentioned by Sir Fidelis Salidao that they conducted two types of operations to recover the oil spilled, namely using spill booms and dispersants. May I ask what made them decide to use those, particularly the dispersal method? It is well known that using dispersants can cause further harm to the environment and biodiversity since it is toxic. Hence, I'm curious about who suggested coming up with both methods to be utilized. If Sir Commodore Fidelis is available. Hello? Sir Commodore Fidelis? This is a very, very nice question, actually. I'm also curious. And I'm not really knowledgeable about this, but this is a very good question. Hello? Is there anyone can answer from perhaps a representative from Coast Guard? All right. So I don't we can't hear any answers from the Coast Guard as of now. So perhaps the BFAR can answer this question.
Well, Ma'am Ivan, I'm sorry, but I cannot answer the question. I'm not also familiar with their procedures, so they should answer.
All right, that's okay, sir. So I can see here that from Greenpeace, Sir Jefferson Chua can actually add something. So please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate the point made that dispersants are toxic. Okay, there we one of the things that is also very important to know is the actual brand of the dispersants that are being used. So if there's an opportunity for the Coast Guard to and all other agencies concerned to answer this, to also include the brand of the dispersants, because it is well known that some brands are exponentially more toxic. One of these more well-known brands because of their that have become infamous because of their toxicity is Corexit, and it's been known that this particular brand is being passed off to developing nations when as a means to provide quote unquote support for oil spill dispersal. So it's very much in the interest of the public to know exactly, right, what kind of dispersant is used. And to reiterate that these dispersants are toxic and they don't actually make the oil disappear, they just disperse it. Essentially, they just break it down. So oil residue essentially is left in the area. So I guess it's one of the things that we also need to hear from the government, why these specific interventions are being done, right? And second, how do they mitigate the potential toxic impacts of these dispersants as well?
All right, thank you so much for that information, Sir Jefferson. So I actually didn't know that, yeah, that they're actually toxic and that there are certain brands that can actually pose more threats than others. And yeah, I think the bottom line for this question is for the public to be well aware on how the national government or those who are actually stakeholders on the agencies that are mitigating and that are on the front lines of actually mitigating and handling this oil spill, to inform the public on how they're managing it and what methods and tools they're actually using, since for the public to actually be very well aware of, since actually it has been mentioned, right, that even the fisher folks can actually volunteer and be given cash assistance out of it. And also there are so many volunteer cleanups that are actually involved in this. So yeah, we really hope for further information regarding this, no? So yeah. All right, so we'll just really finish off the questions that we've received. All right, so from Zoom, sorry po, I might have missed. Ano po ulit yung specific type of oil? Reports are mainly stating industrial oil. So yeah, for me, in my opinion, actually, there is actually, aside from the size of the oil spill, actually, yeah, this is a good question, because from what I know, what kind of oil is actually spilling is important to know, because for example, if it's gasoline, then it has benzene, then it's much more toxic. So can anyone also answer this on what type of oil is actually spilling right now? Is there anyone that's actually aware of the specific type of? Yeah, all right, thank you.
Based on reports, it's been actually emphasized in the early parts of the oil spill that it's actually the tanker fuel that's being leaked. Although there were also reports a few days later, based of the sampling of the Coast Guard. I think it was the Coast Guard that traces of industrial fuel were found in the sample. But until now, there seems to be no definitive categorical answer, right? That at least the public knows regarding the actual type of oil. And again, this is very important. That the only way to know what kind of oil it is really through sampling, right? It's really through going there, getting samples and analyzing it. And the type of oil is very important to know, because industrial oil is actually worse off. Of course, tanker fuel, any kind of fuel is really bad for the environment, but industrial types of fuel poses more difficulties in terms of getting them away from critical areas, and also in terms of the effects that it has in communities and biodiversity. So yeah, so again, it's really again the in our calls, right, to really have more information on these matters, because at the end of the day, it's really the communities that are getting affected adversely because of the lack of information.
All right. Thank you so much, Sir Jeff. So yeah, I totally agree that there certainly has to the government can actually and must actually bridge the gap of the lack of information we're having right now, and I hope we can actually bridge the gap, and so the public can actually be well aware of and be yeah. So moving on to and down to our last question from Facebook by Mark David. So general comment. Oh, it's actually a comment. All right. So good day. I think it's also important for people, especially those who are working on the ground zero, to know that we can use organic materials such as coconut fiber and coconut husks placed in jute sacks as improvised oil spill boom instead of using hair and feathers to contain oil spills. Dr. Resurreccion Sedaba from the University of the Philippines said hair and feathers are made of keratin, which would take long to degrade, and these would just add up to the pollution. So thank you so much for that, Mark David, for that additional input regarding on how we can better manage this oil spill. And in fact, I totally agree. We can use this organic material mentioned, the coconut fiber and coconut husks, in picking up the oil that has been dispersed all over our ocean. So right, we've actually been able to address the certain questions that have been raised, and we're down to the last part already. So we can already wrap up for this, and I'm very grateful for all of the speakers who have actually attended and spent their time and effort in informing the people and in participating for this call, so that we can actually move forward with a better insight and insight on the short term and long term rehabilitation methods that we can actually utilize in managing this oil spill going on right now.
Sorry.
Yes, sure po.
Once again po, this is Maverick from Greenpeace Philippines. We just want to announce that we will be, Greenpeace Oceana CEED will be sending a joint press release later to the media in attendance, of course, with photos and other materials, especially the recording of this forum. So please wait for that by or before 3 p.m. today. Other than that, thank you very much for attending. Back to you, Evan.
All right, thank you so much for that input, Sir Maverick. So
last may isa pang
sure.
Last question daw. If we can read it dun sa with regard to the Verde Island passage. It's okay for me to read it, and then we can direct or we can ask CEED and BFAR to answer this. So yung question ay what are the existing threats on Verde Island Passage that may worsen due to this incident? Siguro CEED first and then BFAR.
Good morning. So the existing threats, what we can say for Verde Island Passage is that one of the things that we promote in CEED is the interconnectivity approach. And we do believe that the impacts felt in Oriental Mindoro, where the onset or where the major oil spill is can greatly affect the ecosystems as well across Verde Island Passage. This is because of the a connectivity approach where one ecosystem is definitely dependent on the other. One ecosystem holds the fish stock and also serves as a cradle for um, fish stock. And so, if these areas across Verde Island Passage were to be harmed or damaged by the extensive impacts of the oil spills, definitely fisheries from the other sectors can um, will also feel the impact as well. Considering that we are expecting these impacts or the impacts of the oil spill will last several months or even up to years, we could potentially see a drop in not only for fisheries in Oriental Mindoro, but also in other areas in Verde Passage. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. From the CEED. So, are there any other further inputs from BFAR as well?
Yes, Ms. Evans. Just to add to what the CEED has stated, it's really true, no, that this will have a lasting and great effect on the overall fisheries status of the Verde Island Passage, considering that the VIP is the richest marine life in the country, you know. And so, with all those ecosystems, coral reefs, seagrass beds, fish stocks, mangrove areas will really suffer, no? And eventually, with all of this, the fisher crop will be affected. The overall livelihood of the fisher crop will be affected, and not only that, but maybe we can also include the tourism effect of this oil spill in the province of Oriental Mindoro and also in the neighboring provinces like Batangas. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for answering the questions, both from CEED and BFAR. So to wrap up our online public forum, so first and foremost, to inform everyone, this forum is actually organized by Greenpeace, Oceana, and the Center for Energy, Ecology, and Development. And in hopes of achieving our objectives today, which is through perspectives of affected communities and experts in civil society, we were able to provide necessary context and data to support calls for urgent action and accountability for the oil spill. And of course, we hope that we are able to maintain the prominence of the oil spill on the news cycle so we can continue servicing the struggles and demands of communities. So all in all, I very much thank the Greenpeace, Oceana, and the CEED for organizing this and for enabling various national agencies and the cooperation both from here in Zoom and our live viewers to actually be informed and be involved in this venture regarding the ongoing and the long-term impacts of the Oriental Mindoro oil spill. And with that, I'm Evan Marie Palapar, and our open forum and our public online forum actually ends here.